You are listening to the sounds of the Right On Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 43 of On the Record Jams, brought to you by the Right On Network. I'm AJ.
I'm Arthur.
And on this episode of On the Record Jams, we are bringing to the record Radiohead, their third album release, the second song, Paranoid Android. Wow, I believe all members of the group get a writing credit for this. And before we go forward with this, I just want to thank our Patreon subscribers because they're helping the Right On Network grow and expand. This is like the second year of this here podcast, and it's thanks to you. And that's Alan Wright, Delvin Sims, he's DJ Merc. Get his music on the music platforms. He goes by DJ Merc Bandwidth, and he has a new album called Boycott Sounds. Tim Price, the pod crasher himself. Cluck Trent, Kim Federkoski, Mark Blair, Paul Hicks over in Australia, Laurel Phillips, The Irredeemable Shag, Justin Steiner, Rick from Rick and Jeff Present Unpacking the Power Power Pack, Chris Pine 1, Bill Beer, April 5K, Jordan Holt, Clinton Robeson, and Jeremy Dahl. So please go to patreon.com/rightonnetwork. And for as little as $1 a month, you can be a Patreon subscriber and go and watch some of the exclusive videos I've been making and just help us with our overhead. Now, hey, let's start this conversation, Arthur. So I presented this to you like, hey, let's cover Paranoid Android by Radiohead. This one came out in May 1997. We're taking it back to the 90s. What's your experience with this record and Radiohead in general, Arthur?
Well, Radiohead in general, this was, for me, the early 90s when you started getting some of that self-segregation, at least in my universe of high school and having all the different music, being able to go out on your own with your friends. So you got the music that is playing in the places that you and your friends go. So maybe you're not at home as much as a preteen would be. So like I think about the 80s for me was mostly as a preteen, and you think, okay, I got BET at night. I got MTV all day for like half of the 80s at least. And like whatever is on those channels, I'm seeing that stuff. And then in the early 90s, it's more like, oh, okay, I still have MTV. I now have BET starting to be an all day thing. But, you know, if it's on MTV, I'm still seeing it. So you know what that means, right? Like that means I knew all about Creep, of course, right? And I also knew a whole lot about High and Dry before we started recording. It was like, oh yeah, I remember, like I heard that song a million times. Like the chorus, like if you hear it, it's like it burns into your head because it's like catchy. It's right there. I remember by the time we got here, I was already in college. And so a lot of my immersion in the music, a lot of it was online stuff, you know, in other words, going online and being put on the stuff and hearing people talk about the same albums over and over and over again, which is more common than what we have now, with the algorithms and being pushed in a certain direction. Maybe before, because it was new to me, it felt like I was deciding where I would go and what I would listen to. And I didn't have a computer at my dorm. I didn't have a computer at my apartment for a year or so till my roommate got a computer. I didn't even have my own computer. But I remember hearing about OK Computer and Radiohead a lot. And I remember hearing about the Bends a lot. And that's kind of what my exposure was to them. Like I would just hear about them a lot, even though I wasn't watching MTV as much. Because again, my time was divided on different things. And I had my quote unquote own stuff. And once I had my own disposable income, I'm putting it on, you know, mostly R&B and hip hop. And so for me to get something that's outside of that, I almost had to get put onto it. And so the late 90s was me like discovering or rediscovering or being put on to 70s and 80s let's call it rock music, even though that's really reductive, but like anything from that range. So that's when I listened to Zeppelin and Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joel, all that 70s like foundational music, and even some of the more folksy stuff like Carole King and all of that. Like I got put on to that stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s. So that's where my quote unquote other category was focused on. So I didn't have these albums, but I heard some of these songs. So that's kind of where I was at on it. So even now, I feel like I'm hearing these albums with 2026 ears kind of for the first time. And maybe if there's 12 songs, I know 2 or 3 of them, but I don't know the whole album. I just remember OK Computer, OK Computer, OK Computer over and over and over again. It's like, this is something that whenever you get around to it, you're not going to be upset with yourself. And what do you know? It took a long time, but the truth is I am not upset after listening to this whole album. And I think now I'm more prepared for it now with my current ears than I would have been at that time because of the mood of it, because of the apprehension of it. I don't know if 1997 me had this much disillusionment. It probably would have just sounded like, man, these guys are a little sad for my taste. I don't think I want to hear all this. Like, I think it would have been tougher for me to really absorb it and appreciate it the way I appreciated it when I listened to it for this show.
Okay, my origin with this band is hazy. So when I look back on it, I think I might be an unreliable narrator, and I think that might be playing into the theme of some of the stuff that they cover. But I think like with Creep, I think I was like, oh, that's interesting, but I don't know. But that I didn't gravitate towards it. Like, oh, let me seek this out further. I don't know if I even like, oh, I hope this video comes on. I can't remember. And then in the summer of '96, I went to this thing in Austin, Texas, at University of Texas called Boys State. And it was where like all these boys from the state of Texas, we went to UT and we ran a mock government. And I remember like, he was like, hey, if you want to play football, you play football. If you want to play basketball, you play basketball. And I did that. We had basketball tournaments. And then they had a talent show. And this dude, he covered Creep on acoustic guitar. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, this song is good. So I remember thinking like, oh, okay, yeah, there's something there. And then the Bends, but I must have heard the Bends before that event happened. But I remember with the Bends, like you were bringing up High and Dry and Fake Plastic Trees, I didn't really gravitate towards those. Now, whenever I do okay, I'm going to listen to the Bends all in one, I don't skip those songs. But I think one day, and it had to be 120 minutes, and I saw the video for Just, and that's when I was like, oh yeah, I want this. Because, you know, the music where like, hey, the song's over here, then the song's over there, then they switch it up on a dime and they go this way. I fall in love with that. So I'm like, oh, okay, no, I do like this band. Yeah, I like the Bends. Yeah, this is where it's at. So like, I love the Bends. I love Planet Telex. The Bends, their sophomore album. That's where it's like, hey, you're going to be on this island for the rest of your life. You can only take a finite amount of stuff. I'm taking the Bends with me. So I'm doing full disclosure talk right now.
There you go.
So I was ready for OK Computer. And I remember I think I was going to meet someone. And also, you and I and a third person, I don't know if it's our mutual friend Andre or our mutual friend Kevin, we went and saw, but I know the two of us were part of this. We went and saw Batman Forever. And we saw it late at night. It had to be on a Sunday. So when I got back home, and we're still in high school with this. When I got home, I put it on MTV and I saw Black Star. No, I'm sorry, not Black Star, but guys, you know the video where it's in black and white and they're kind of like at a carnival after hours. And they're doing these cool special effect things. That's when I was like, oh, yeah, no, man. these guys are great.
Yeah, Street
So
Spirit.
when Street Spirit, thank you. Yeah, Street Spirit. I saw a Street Spirit video after we went and saw Batman Forever with Val Kilmer. And when Paranoid Android came out, I remember, I think I was supposed to meet up with a friend. And I had on MTV, and I was like, oh, whoa, Radiohead has a new song, a new video. And I watched that video, and I was like, for Paranoid Android. And I was like, huh. And like in junior high, I was a big fan of Bohemian Rhapsody. I was like, oh, yeah, this is cool. Like, you know, it's over here, then the music goes over there. It's like, you got 5 songs in one. So I remember when I heard this, I was like, oh, man, they kind of did one for this generation. Like, yeah, the music's over here, then it's over there, and then they're rocking out, but then there's a slow part. And the cartoon was weird and stuff. So I think I took it as, all right, I'm a young man, I'm about to go into adulthood. This is the next stage, and like I guess my music is doing it with me. And I think I took it as that. And then I didn't think the music was out of left field because at that point I'd already heard Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. In junior high, I was listening to The Doors. You know, I was already exposed to Public Enemy and other stuff. So this didn't seem weird to me. Like Radiohead music is like, this is pretty pop. Even when they're doing like outrageous stuff, I was like, this is listenable. So that's what I'm on. But wow, they this is a big band, and write into us at On the Record Jams because my blind spots are Pink Floyd, U2, Bruce Springsteen. And I think because I saw a documentary about Bruce Springsteen, and I did buy a U2 album once. It was called How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. And in the songs, the album was great. The songs, they were doing these kind of premeditated, orchestrated, leading up to a crescendo thing. And that's when I was like, oh, like, okay, is Radiohead also doing this? Like, because, you know, they're not just some band in a vacuum. They got to have some type of influence. So I'm like, okay, because every once in a while when I read about Radiohead or whatever, it'll say Pink Floyd to be mentioned. So yeah, write into us and say like, oh yeah, like on this song or here, this is where like, yeah, Pink Floyd would have been a big influence on them, or U2. But I can't really make those comparisons because Pink Floyd, U2, and Bruce Springsteen, those are blind spots for me. But yeah, man, Paranoid Android, because can you talk about like in the late 90s, Arthur, with the whole OK Playa thing, message boards.
Oh, message boards and like bringing people together / tearing them apart, right? Like I think now in 2026, people view the internet a certain way. The bloom is off the rose, right? Like there's no idea of like, oh man, getting online is going to connect me more with people. It's there because everything is so polarized. It's going to take you into a corner and isolate you depending on how you manage your social media or your content consumption. Like you look at one video of people fighting in the street and then you get on the next day and you have 29 videos of people fighting in the street. And you're like, dude, I watched one video. I didn't really want that for the rest of my internet travels for the next 2 weeks. Like that wasn't what I was looking for. Well, back then, maybe some of those things were happening, but a lot of internet usage was also tied to desktop usage. So you had to have a computer, you had to sit at that computer, and then you had to type in where you wanted to go. In my case specifically, like I didn't have a computer for the first couple of years of me being in college. So you say 96, 97 into 98. So I would go to the computer lab and you know what it was. 1 part homework, 4 parts internet, goofing off. Checking into music, checking into wrestling, checking into movies, checking into whatever I wanted to see what the online conversation was. And then like late 90s, early 2000s is when I personally found OK Player. And that was the website with Questlove and the Roots, and that whole outfit and all the acts had like a place to do interviews, get their albums reviewed by like-minded people. And part of what brought me there was D'Angelo's Voodoo and Common's like Water for Chocolate, which I view as a double CD with two different artists, right? Like it's like the original Love Below Speaker Box for me. Like those two albums go together. Like they're made in a similar time. There's even stories of them trading songs back and forth. Like, ooh, we think this song would be better on this album. Depend on who you ask which songs they are. But allegedly, just to clarify that, maybe people will write in and tell us their stories. But Ghetto Heaven from Common's album was allegedly on D'Angelo's album, and Chicken Grease that ended up on D'Angelo's album was originally on Common's album. So that's the alleged beat swap that is known, that's talked about all the time. But anyway, that is kind of that universe that had already picked up enough steam by 2000, but that had been already happening with a lot of other artists and a lot of other places. And I remember hearing about OK Computer even back then, like in the bins back then, and Radiohead and all of the commentary around that. Also during that time, that's when I found out people didn't like Nas as it was written. I was very confused by that. I was like, you mean this album that I bought twice and listened to like it was going out of style and I loved it? People didn't like that? You're on your own. I had a lot of early notes in my internet travels that like, just because it's repeated a lot online doesn't mean it's the truth or that it's something I need to roll with. And I think that served me in keeping some percentage of my own mind intact, which I think Radiohead would be proud of based on what they talked about on OK Computer a lot of the ways. So yeah, that whole internet universe is where you're starting to see the internet and computers become much bigger parts of people's lives outside of a business application. You know what I mean? Like you go to work in an office, you sit down to a computer, you use the computer to do some work, you go home. And that, like, let's say before the mid 90s, that was a lot of the average person's exposure to a computer was based on that. Like, remember when we were in high school, they had computer lab. And it was like one class, and you might not have had a computer-based class every year even. And you would go in there and play like Oregon Trail or something, like, and they'd make you write like one little small program, and they were like, close enough. Or, hey, you know how to type a certain speed? They're like, yeah, you should be good to go. And now imagine like kids now, middle school and beyond, they get a tablet or a laptop when they check into a lot of these schools now. So it's like it's a part of everything they do. They have email addresses. They get messages. They get instant messages. They talk to each other. The teacher sends them assignments. They turn in their assignments online via these devices. And then the end of the year, they have to give the device back. And like like computers are everywhere. And we got a chance to see that happening in real time in the mid and late 90s. But I don't know about you, but I wasn't all that concerned about it. I was just like, well, you know, I got to go to the computer lab to get on the computer. And even when I have a computer at my house, I'm still using it for specific things of my choosing. And it's not taking up my whole day. Well, that's adorable to think about now, because now you have the phones and you could think, okay, there's people that spend 15 hours a day on their phone.
Hey, that's a good point. I never thought to approach this conversation this way. One, when I first heard this album, had I even been on the internet before?
I mean, 96, 97. Because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up with a computer in my house. I mean, the most...
Yeah, I didn't have a computer in the home.
The Nintendo was my computer.
Yeah, the Nintendo was my computer, and the computer class, like I remember I took this computer programming class, and like all you're doing, like, hey, okay, I made this bubblegum machine, program bubblegum in there, and then the quarter goes in, the bubblegum comes out. But I don't think I needed the internet to do that. So, yeah, that's a good point, because like with Doctor Who, and Doctor Who's going to come up again in this conversation, in 1970, it went color. And that's kind of interesting because how much of the population had a color television at the time? So it might be one of the things like, hey, and it's in color. It's like, well, we don't have a color television. Our television's in black and white. So it's kind of interesting. Hey, we're going to have this conversation. Okay, computer, with a big swath of the public who may not have the internet yet. Or if they like, hey, and we have internet, it's like this luxury item. So yeah, things like you got mail and this. I never thought about, wow, you made that movie at a time where not everyone had the internet. Where we're still at the point, I think, and this was an episode that came out before OK Computer, where like on Friends, they're like, oh yeah, something, I found this on the internet. These guys on the internet said this. So it's still novel, like 2000, 2001, 2002. Like it's still this novel thing, even though the internet had been out for years. So it's kind of interesting. Okay, not only or because we're going to get into this conversation with Radiohead kind of predicting the future, but they're also predicting the future to people where, hey, we're using this language, but some of these words are going to sound like gobbledygook because we're not in the same realm yet. And now, that's why I keep saying this, like with Seinfeld, hey, even Ghostface, the Wu-Tang Clan, where these things make more sense now. So like when a young person is like, oh yeah, and I like this now. Like, wow, you like this? Why? Because actually this thing makes more sense now than it did back then. Because we got to remember, like with Seinfeld, when it came out, it was going against the grain. Like everything, it was like, hey, we're a family show. We live in the Midwest. This is this family show. So when Seinfeld came out, that was weird. Same thing like Wu-Tang Clan, when they came out, like they were weird. Like this isn't what everyone else is doing. So you're taking a risk. And with this OK Computer, and just the whole thing with that, like it should be like, computers, this is great. It's going to help us. And OK Computer sounds like, okay, we give up, we submit. Take me over, computer. I don't even want to fight. Wow. So I think with that, I did understand that kind of stuff. Because again, like, you know, we're you know, with us, we're watching Do the Right Thing in School Days in elementary. We're listening to Public Enemy. So it's even like NWA and stuff. It's a whole bunch of, hey man, the system's messed up. This is messed up. So we understood that, and like we were watching like blaxploitation films, and like we understood the struggle. But like I don't know, because we were doing some pregame talk. I don't know if we were saying that struggle talk was just something kind of ingrained, or like just this kind of natural default geometry math class first step given, where this is on a level of, wait a minute, hold on. This technology, this is the new enslaver. Shouldn't we stop this? Like, haven't we seen this before? Remember, like, there's a lot of broken records and rhyming going on in history. This is the next chapter. Should we just stop? We just saw Terminator 2 several years ago, and we're about to befriend this thing? Okay, computer.
Yeah, you think
okay,
about
boomer.
that, right? But yeah, okay, boomer. Yeah, you think.
I never realized that when they're saying okay, boomer, just like okay, play. This is a play on that okay, computer thing.
It is, but you think,
Wow.
okay, computer, you take it over. I'm going to trust you. You're smarter than me. You can calculate all these many things per second. I can't do that. Okay, you must be smarter than me, so I'm going to trust you. You say you're bringing me together by giving me the internet? Cool. And then now you look around in the last 15, 20 years, there's been all this dialogue about the internet dividing people and putting people in there, again, different corners, polarizing people. And now it's just like, yeah, whatever, that's happening. And like, to answer what you're talking about with our exposure, I think this trick has always been in play, right? To tell people that like your problem is unique to you, or your upbringing, or your part of town, or your neighborhood, or people with the same amount of money as you, or people of your same race, or whatever it is, right? And it's like, oh, well, you're the first generation of person in your bloodline to go to college. Oh, okay, now you fall into a certain range, and now the same people are trying to stop all of y'all, and like it really isolates those struggles. Whereas something like OK Computer is talking about more of a shared universal struggle upcoming that you can't see. Whereas maybe for Public Enemy, it's like, hey, dude, police brutality is happening to me. Or yes. Even like Marvin Gaye, what's going on? Like, crime is increasing, trigger happy policing. Like, this is a thing, the Rodney King thing. Like, that felt like a unique thing based on one of the groups and categories that we were put into growing up. Whereas something like OK Computer, the thing that's jarring about it till this day is like the people being victimized, they don't spend a lot of time on that. You know what I mean? Like, the way the music is written is more about these forces are working against us, like all of us. We're together. Like, it's us against this machine, this track, this train, saying you need to be happy with this. And we're going to tell you what this is. And as time goes on, we're going to keep changing what this is. We're going to make it a little bit worse and keep telling you ought to be the same amount of happy with it. And it's like, that's something that, conceptually speaking, maybe 20-year-old just out of high school me wouldn't get that at that time. But hearing it now at this age with these ears, knowing what we know now after 30 years of internet exposure, it sounds like, oh man, these suckers were right. And like, these suckers were right to be paranoid. And it's like, yeah, I may be paranoid, but an android is in the back of this refrain. And it's like, ooh. And it's like, oh, so yeah, the whole idea of like, you're trying to keep me on this track. You're trying to tell me what I ought to be happy with. And this doesn't feel right. Like, the things that y'all are saying I should be comfortable around aren't working for me. And we've talked about this in a lot of our last few episodes, is this idea of people having this one-dimensional concept of fame or riches, or you thinking that you're famous, you must be rich. Like, if people know who I am, I got to have a lot of money, right? Because I'm famous. And once I get this money, then I can do whatever I want. And if I could do whatever I want, I'm set. Right? And from a rapper standpoint, yeah, we got beat over the head with that all through the early 90s, that these guys were like trying to escape their horrible family structures and their bad upbringings and the hood or whatever, or all the gang stuff or the drug selling and all of that. And it's like, I'm going to get out of that. I'm going to get away from that. And I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to bring my friends, and all these jokes about breaking into the White House and beating up everybody in there and taking it over and all that stuff. Like, that was happening. So you're right. We had heard all of that before, and we kept on hearing it in the 30 years since then. Like, if you think about Kendrick Lamar on To Pimp a Butterfly, like the first song, you know, like Wesley's Theory, he's coming in at the first song. Man, when I get signed, homie, I'm act a fool. I'm going in the White House. I'm bringing the homies. Like, I'm going to cause havoc I'm going to get back at these people that they didn't think I could get here, and now I'm here. And then that album proceeds to unfold that maybe here isn't everything it's cracked up to be. So it's like we love to hear this story again and again. And so for me, OK Computer and Paranoid Android is another version of that, except it's a lot more abstract. And again, there's less focus on the narrator and more of a focus on the issue. Whereas I think a lot of the music we heard was more like the narrator is pointing at themselves saying, hey, this is happening to me. This is happening to my family. This is happening to my neighborhood. This is happening to people that look like me, people that came up like me. Whereas it seems like Radiohead doesn't even have a desire to explain who the narrator is. And it's just more of like, this is how I'm feeling. And don't worry about me, because look at this thing that I'm trying to get you to see that's not great at all. And we're all falling for it. We got to get out of this.
Yes, it's like hey, we're just writing about the human experience just in general.
Right. And I wonder, we were talking about this before we hit record, and I don't know if this is like a statement on a world statement where maybe you will hear the concept that people, especially people who didn't grow up in the United States, their general concept is like, man, the average American is very narrow-minded and very selfish and very locked in on their experience being the experience, and they lack perspective. And maybe depending on where you are in other spots in the world, you're always very clear that you're just one piece of this bigger puzzle. Everything can't be about you because the way the society around you works doesn't allow for that. Like, so that's not going to happen. So now it's just you go along with what we set up for you, whether it be the different government structures, whether it be the different economy approaches, all those different things. And so to hear that coming from a non-American is always interesting to me, to hear how they approach some of the same concerns. Because again, it doesn't feel as individualized. It feels more, like you said, like more of a human discussion than it is a New Yorker discussion or a person from Compton discussion or a dude from a certain neighborhood discussion or a certain race or a certain age group. Like, it's not that. Like, it's not like Paranoid Android or anywhere on OK Computer. They're like, we representing for the 9/7, y'all. Like, they're not saying the year.
Right.
Like, it's not like you would have to either have heard this during the time or be looking at the information to say, oh, okay, this album is from this period of time, because it doesn't, if you weren't exposed to the music at that time, they could plug this in at any time in the last 30 years and you'd be like, oh, yeah. If you told me that album came out in 2007, you'd kind of buy it unless you knew for sure. And like you've talked about a lot, this is one of those foundational groups and albums that people heard this album, it resonated with them, and they said, oh man, these dudes are crawling right now. These dudes are crawling. And now I'm going to come back after that and I'm going to walk or run. And maybe I won't go all the way with it like these guys are, but I'm going to take a little piece of this, a little piece of that. And yeah, if now that I know you can make songs like this, about this, in this way, oh shoot, I feel the same way. So I can make those same types of songs with me and my homeboys, and we're going to put our band together and we're going to do our thing.
Yeah, and going forward with Radiohead, like, this is OK Computer is like the last time I think where they're like, we're going to be as straightforward as we can. And then after this, they have a lyric where they say, we fishes. So not we are fish, we fishes. They have some other lyrics where they do things like that, because I can't remember if it's Brothers Grimm where they're, you know, like you and I were speaking English to each other right now. We go 500 years back in time around some English speakers. It would probably be not certain that we would understand each other because language is going to change over time. And that's what the Grimm brothers were trying to do in some of their storytelling. Like, okay, this is how sounds can change. And, you know, people using slang and all this stuff. So I think that's what Radiohead, they're trying to do. They're trying to project like, okay, what if there was like a pop band on a planet colony, an Earth colony in space 700 years from now? So, like, people are listening to this Radiohead song, like, oh, that's pretty weird. Where we're trying to make it seem like, no, but that would be the pop song in the future. So, like, with the Paranoid Android, this is a reference to a Douglas Adams book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where it's like, hey, it's the diner in space. Like, there's this space diner, and it's in the future. So, like, I'm pretty sure these guys are fans of Douglas Adams' work and his writing, and like him projecting the future and the human experience, and like the further we get with technology, the less humanity we have, and all this stuff, and in androids, and like lampooning culture and language and all this stuff. So they're playing around with that, but I think they, you know, like you were talking about the fitter, brighter, stronger, all this stuff. They're already going, I think we know how 2022 is going to go. And we're not even being geniuses. It's just, come on, what else is going to, I mean, we're seeing the run up. So like analytics and this and that. And now we're going to use mathematics. We're going to figure out this, how to be the general manager of the sport. You know, don't shoot a long 2-pointer anymore. Shoot a 3-pointer and this stuff. And eat this fruit after 1, but don't eat that fruit after 2. And that's where we've gotten. And then, like with AI, they said that AI is having hallucinations. I'm like, what? Paranoid Android.
Yep.
Ain't that something?
It's crazy, man.
So Radiohead, they're British. They're coming from a long line of, we got George Orwell with Animal Farm in 1984. I know Animal Farm is pre-World War II, but the paranoia and the warnings and, cautionary tale with that. We have Alan Moore. He wrote The Watchmen. He's a paranoid Brit, grumpy, but also, again, humanity. You know, we really did have superhumans. If we did have superheroes, how would they behave in the world, but for real? Would they be altruistic, or would they be just as selfish and petty and all this stuff as us? George Harrison, he wrote Piggies, you know, talking about the government and all this stuff, and Taxman, how they're being unfairly taxed. You know, they're again British. In Doctor Who in the 1970s, they had Robert Holmes, where the doctor, he's from this race of people called Time Lords. And before Robert Holmes, they were kind of written like these majestic, magnanimous kind of, and then when he was like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm going to have these people be petty politicians. These are going to be some tenured college professors that should be out of here, but they're not. And with Douglas Adams, he did some script editing and writing for Doctor Who, and like playing with ideas of, okay, this pirate planet, they're pillaging planets for their resources and just sucking them dry. And you're like, why are they doing this? And you find out there's this queen. She needs all that energy to keep her young. And it's like, okay, all this kind of stuff, Margaret Thatcher, and then boom, it's the 1990s. We get Radiohead. We're approaching the 2000s. We're approaching the new millennium. And like for a long time, we were going like, hey man, we're going to party like it's 1999. And Radiohead said, no, man, it's not going to be a party. It's going to be like the end of a certain kind of humanity as we know it.
Yep. The cautionary tales is hard. And like you said, it's a rich history of this happening in different art. And it's nothing different to see it in the musical space. And I know we spend a lot of time on my end, talking about Marvin Gaye and some of the things he was predicting with what's going on and in my life, in our lifetime, question mark, in the later 70s, early 80s, like that album that he basically never finished and Motown just took it and put it out. But a lot of those concepts were there. Like, man, people aren't always doing the right thing when they have an opportunity to have power and energy. And then even as famous singers and actors and whatever, he spent a lot of time on that album describing that universe. And he has this crazy song called Ego Tripping Out, where he's like, man, we're out here partying. We're out here acting a fool. We're out here worried about buying the biggest house. Like, we're not doing what we're supposed to do. Or even if you think about Smashing Pumpkins and Zero, we went over that. Like, it's like these stories keep coming along, right? Like, where it's like, man, even Prince, Money Don't Matter Tonight, like these things keep coming up where it's like, man, I had this idea of what I would be able to do once I got famous. And man, it doesn't look like I'm able to fix this. It doesn't look like I'm able to stop this. I don't know if I can even stop it with myself, let alone trying to get you to worry about it. And like you say, you talk about unreliable narrators. When people are struggling, it's very difficult to sell struggling people on a solution when you yourself are not struggling. You know what I mean? Especially with people having a very one-dimensional idea of like, if you sing for a living and I know who you are, you better not be broke. Now, we've seen enough behind the musics and know enough about bad record contracts because rappers keep telling us about it. Like, we know that now, but sheesh, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, even by the time this came along, we were thinking, yeah, you know, you mentioned this before we hit record. Yeah, people viewed Radiohead as like, yeah, I don't know if I want to hear all this stuff you're saying, man, because aren't you rich? Isn't everything cool? Like, you probably got the nicest computer and you could probably use or not use the technology as much as you want to because you have money. But what do you want me to do if I'm a person that's struggling and it's being sold to me that this technology is my ticket to a better life? Like, you know, think about what we were being told even at our age. Like, hey, you got to learn how to use a computer. You got to learn how to type because computers are going to be at every office. And if you work in an office, you're going to be at a computer. Therefore, you better learn how to use these computers and learn how technology works, at least in the basic level. And then now in the 30 years since I started college or since I graduated from high school, yeah, it's interesting to have a teenage child. Like my daughter, again, she's got tablets and all of that being given to her before school even starts. And all of the communication with the teachers comes from that. I get messages, I get emails when she misses a homework assignment. Like, it's just like the technology and the communication is all in a part of all of the lives. And I don't know about you, man, but I had to go through a spot where it's like you delete certain apps off your phone. And even if you don't, you turn off the notifications. So at least you could get some of that, study hall, computer lab feeling where you say, okay, I'm going to open this when I want to open this. And it's addictive enough, even with that, without you getting a notification every time somebody posts, right? Like if you're on any kind of social media and you have notifications for anybody you follow post, man, you're going to get hundreds, if not thousands of notifications like every single day. Like your phone's going to constantly be binging and bopping and booping, telling you that you got to stop what you're doing to come look at this thing on the internet. And it's like, that's just one small way that it kind of takes you over, let alone the more sinister stuff with the algorithms and the polarization and all of that crazy stuff. Now, do we think Radiohead was all the way there with it? Probably not. But they look like geniuses now because all this stuff from this album and this specific song, it would make sense. Like, it makes perfect sense to be afraid now, because now we know we had reasons to be afraid.
Arthur, when you pressed play on this song last week, what was going on in your mind?
Well, this was one of these long time coming things. So we talk about on the record jams and how we do this for each other, whether we revisit things we haven't heard in a while, or we finally go ahead and click play on something that we know we've been needing to hear for a long time. I think I really have done a lot of work with myself to have anticipation without expectation. Because it's something that I see in myself. It's something that I see in people, that they will tell themselves a story and they create all this optimism, and they create too much of an expectation around something that they haven't experienced. And then now the actual experience has to live up to your dream of what it's going to be. And I think some of that is human, right? You have to have some level of anticipation and excitement about certain things. But I think with music, because I've heard so much music and because I love music so much, I'm more of a kind of just let it take me wherever it's going to go type of thing. And so you got to think what I've been listening to the last month. I mean, we talked about it in the last episode. There was a lot of Wu-Tang, a lot of Nas, a lot of all of these types of things we were listening to. Then a few weeks before that, I jumped full strength into this Earth, Wind, and Fire thing, which is a different type of thing. Like, I hadn't heard like full Earth, Wind, and Fire albums. It had been a few years at least since I had done that. And you know, those guys are the cosmic, optimistic, like, we're recognizing that things aren't great, but you need to come out on the other side. And our music is like the soundtrack for coming out on the other side. So in contrast, me hitting play on this is way more apprehension, way more, man, this is an ugly picture I'm painting for you. I want to get out of this. I don't know how to get out of this. I just know we're all in it, and I don't like it, and I want to do something about it. And so it's like that message, especially when I played the whole album, like that message just kept coming across as far as that part of the music. But then when you get into the music itself, like I was joking with you before we hit record, like I don't know what the verb is for playing guitar, but let's just say there's a lot of really good guitaring going on these songs. And this song is no different. You know, we're both suckers for any kind of musical change, beat change, 3 songs in one, 2 songs in one. We're both suckers for that. And so not a shock that you would pick this song, and we get a hell of a switch up for this one. And it's jarring. Like the first, like when that switch happened, I was like, whoa, what are they doing? Whoa. And when we get into the rain down part, I'm like, man, what is happening? And so that was on the first listen. I felt like I was caught off guard, even without going in with any kind of expectations. I was like, man, okay, I got the lyrics pulled up. I'm trying to make sure I'm catching everything that's going. I'm smelling what they're cooking, so to speak. And it's like, okay, like I got it. I'm in it. Okay, these dudes are disillusioned, all this stuff. Okay, that's kind of what I remember. Okay, I'm in it. But then it's like being caught off guard as a listener of music, to me, is a great joy, right? Because you start hearing a song, especially if you make the mistake of looking at a time, right? Because then that's when like the humanity kicks in, and you're like, okay, I'm listening to this album. Maybe like you say, you're folding some clothes, you're riding to the store, you're sitting on a bike at the gym, you're doing a workout, like, because I'm the type, like, I can work out to almost anything. So I was on a bike listening to OK Computer. And so I'm just sitting there, and it's like, okay. And then that switch comes, and I'm like, what are these suckers doing here? Okay. Like that that really got me. So, I mean, I don't know. To me, it got me listening to it the first time. It got me listening to it the sixth or seventh time, because you can imagine I ran this song back quite a few times in the last couple of weeks in between listening to the whole album. Then also realizing that there was a video, watching that insane video and putting that in there. But I didn't watch the video till like my sixth or seventh listen. So the video didn't impact my thoughts on the song. I had already had an impression of the song by the time I saw the video. So I can't speak to seeing the video. But then it's like, oh, yikes. The video is one of these statement making, sneaky things going on, talking about the disillusionment, seeing as people get older and how people get tricked into doing certain things to try to find that whole, can't get no satisfaction. You're trying to find it and you're going out on the edges and the extremes. And that's where that song really resonates with the future to me, because I keep talking about how people are always getting polarized on the internet and getting dragged into weird corners that without the internet, they'd probably never end up there. But you get radicalized, you get lonely, you get bored, you start trying to find a feeling, and then you get so numb to the basic world that you have to see something or do something weird just to feel something. And it's like, oh man, this guy's talking about all this stuff all over the album. So, and I got like, again, with the current universe in 2026 ears, it's super obvious and you can hear all of it now. So this is one of those albums that, like you say, is so ahead of its time, but now it almost feels like it's right on time.
It's right on time. Yeah. I would be interested because we're about to approach the 30th year of when this came out. If you're younger and you're listening to this, what are your thoughts on this? Like, how would you describe Paranoid Android? Because I know, like, okay, like if I'm listening to some 70s some stuff and some 60s stuff, I feel like there's 70s and 60s like magic to it. Like I can hear the magic. And I just want someone to describe, because to me, this sounds modern. But, that's because I grew up with it and I'm older. So I would like to hear a young person like, dude, this doesn't sound modern. It sounds 90s. And like someone now, they would. So I just want that described to me, because same thing with like Nas, where it's like, man, this guy kind of sounds timeless. And I do understand, like with Illmatic, it was like this nostalgia factor too. But you talked about, like Nas is coming, and it was written, where I think like there's certain songs on there where it was like, I couldn't trick you and like pick one of these songs on It Was Written and just told you, oh no, this was released last year. You wouldn't believe that? Sounds kind of modern to me, but I know, of course, no, dude, it ain't modern. Like a kid would go, this don't sound modern. And it don't need to, but I'm just saying, I have to check my own bias, because there's just certain things where I would be like, or like even like with, not Britney Spears, but Taylor Swift, she has that song Shake It Off. The way that's produced, if you told me that song came out last year, why would I not think that? Like, what about it? Because I'm still trying to figure out, like, okay, what is the 2000s? What are the aughts? What are the 2010s? So, like, when I hear something like Shake It Off, I think, like, a couple of years ago, I was reminded, dude, this song's over 10 years old. I was like, I'm thinking, like, this is new. Like, no, dude, it ain't new. But the production sounds like, it sounds pretty modern. It sounds like there's, like, this kind of fairy dust to it, where it's like, oh, I thought it was made in the 60s. Okay, so, hey, let's break down some of these lyrics. I don't know if this is gobbledygook. I don't know what this stuff is. But I do remember, like, wow, boy, y'all went for it. It goes, please, could you stop the noise? I'm trying to get some rest from all the unborn chicken voices in my head. I was like, whoa, what? But I like that. I'm trying to get some rest. Please, could you stop all the noise? What's that? I may be paranoid, but not an android. I didn't even. Is that being said in the background?
It's being said in the backtracks. Yeah. So if you're not playing it loud, like it's almost mumbled, but it's in there.
What's that? I may be paranoid, but I'm not an android. And dude, we just straight up called a phone company Android, and AI is having hallucinations. And then, boy, I remember this struck me. When I am king, you will be first against the wall. And like, that's an interesting thing where like, hey, this is the sweetest little girl. This is the sweetest little girl. And so like with George Orwell, he goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And say, no, I don't have to believe that. You see that sweet little girl over there? You see that sweet little girl? If she had all the power of the world, she would still be sweet. No, she wouldn't. She would have you up against that wall on a stake. So, man, when I am king, you'll be first against the wall. So, like, man, these people aren't listening to my opinions. They don't believe the way I want to believe on these message boards. Man, when I become an operator, when I become a moderator on here, I'm going to set the record straight.
Yep. And man, think about that subject and how often that comes up in artists' music when they're like, hey, I have this negative opinion of what the powerful people do with their power. But then you hear it in their music, and especially in the rap space where it's so much more in the face and tangible. It's like, hey, when I get in power, I'm gonna do some get back. Like I'll fix all the stuff I said I was gonna fix when I got in power, right? Please don't think I won't. But I'm gonna get some people first. I'm gonna abuse this power first, and then I'm gonna get back to doing the right thing one of these days.
I was telling a friend, I'm a fan of Christopher Nolan's films, and I saw The Odyssey and I loved it. And I was telling a friend, he hadn't seen the movie. If someone were to criticize the movie, like apparently like, someone, they've been writing essays about it. I was like, I bet I could read that essay and agree with everything that they're saying, but it doesn't matter. I'm still going to like the movie. So I think like sometimes where like, there's some people like, hey, step into this trap or whatever. Like, hey, engage with me. Where like I'll go, oh, I really like that. No, dude, that was a good movie because this, and that. I see what you're saying. I don't care. I still like it. Yeah. So like I'm not following it. Like, and that's what Radiohead is trying to warn. Maybe no, you just don't have a spine. Okay, but like I'm not walking in these. I'm not going back and forth with you. So no. So it goes, when I am king, you will be first against the wall with your opinion, which is of no consequence at all.
Spit.
Dude, opinions will get you killed. Opinions will get you disappeared.
That's the part that they didn't have right. Because now we know the negative opinion business is a big business. And if you want to get impressions and clicks, just show up and say you don't like something. Especially if it's something that people already like. You think about the Odyssey, right? I went and saw it last week. I enjoyed it as well. But it's like, yeah, I look at it. I get a little bit of information about the movie because it's a big deal and it's a big thing and it feels big when you're watching it. And you're like, man, these suckers put it down. Like they put money into this. Look at all these people they had in the movie at the same time. Okay, this is great. But yeah, even when you're clicking around trying to get information, like you said, the think pieces are out there. Like why this movie is overrated. Why this movie is so not in line with the original story. Or, oh, they changed a couple people's races around. Oh, look at what they're trying to do to us. They're trying to trick us now. And it's like, man, there's people looking for the trap while they're standing in a completely different trap. And it's like not liking stuff as a sport is a whole business model, not liking stuff. So then like that's been happening, whether it be from the critic standpoint. And again, artists in the 70s complained about this and talked about this and didn't really know how to deal with it. But by the time you get to the 90s, you have artists like openly like bashing critics in the middle of their songs. You know what I mean? And that's not just a rapper thing. Mm-hmm. Like that's a 90s, that's a decidedly very 90s obvious thing. And even the groups that speak in riddles and things, like you got to really pay attention to the lyrics. You don't got to pay attention to the part where they bash the critics to say, hey, I'm doing this. This is my thing. I'm not going to let you ruin my thing with all of your self-created restrictions. You're trying to build importance off of yourself with negativity. I'm trying to do this bigger picture thing. I'm trying to create some art, and I'm not going to let your review scores and your negative think pieces ruin my music for me, even though I did waste some of my music to talk to you. So it's always interesting how often that comes up. We talked about it with the Strokes as well. Like obviously this was years later, like half a decade later, but obviously the Strokes were super aware of the critics and the critiques that they were taking in.
Yeah. No, this, your opinion, I like what you're saying. You're saying they got it wrong on this one, where the opinions and throwing out that apple of discord to get everybody riled up, where if we're speaking positively about this, people don't stick around. But the negative reviews to cause debate and online, and now I don't know if I can look my uncle in the eye or whatever, or now I found out some things about my coworkers. I feel uncomfortable now. Like, wait a minute, you were thinking this the whole time, Jimmy? But so, when I am king, you will be first against the wall with your opinion, which is of no consequence at all. What's that? I may be paranoid, but not Andrew. I swear I never heard that. Okay, what's that? I may be paranoid, but not Andrew.
Play it loud. It's in there.
And now, this is the one right here, Arthur. Even like when I was like 17, I'm like, whoa, man, this, woo. Ambition makes you look pretty ugly. Boy, I remember, whoa, man, that's, you're supposed to be telling me, I mean, be ambitious, go out there, go get them, go ahead, man. Like, dude, swindle these people out there at life savings, fix these algorithms where it'll have the people turning on each other, neighbor against neighbor, and then they'll eat each other from within, and then we can get conquered that way.
Yep.
Kicking, squealing, Gucci, little piggy. I didn't know he said Gucci.
Yep. Apparently that's from like a personal story. Something that he went through. Yeah. Ambition makes you look pretty ugly. Kicking, squealing, Gucci, little piggy. You don't remember. Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man. Why don't you remember my name? I guess he does. Oh, boy. Is this some type of personal altercation? Of course.
I do remember, but I feel like it was after the promotion for this album. Him talking about someone like attacking him or something, and he was like, I don't want to mention that name. I don't want to give him any credit. I don't know if it was this situation. Yikes. And then with this whole, I don't know if this is a middle 8 section or what, but the Rain Down, and you got the backing vocals going on. You find that interesting? And you said that caught you off guard when you first heard it, Rain Down?
Because that switch. Because it was a switch, and then they gave the guitarist some. The Greenwood brothers, let them have it, and they went to it, and then he comes back with the Rain Down. And some of the way he delivers vocals, and again, this could be reductive and based on lack of knowledge, but then you hear some of the things that I associate with Bono in U2. Like the way he sings certain stuff, like the emoting to it. So it's like, okay, if somebody wants to tell me that amongst their influences is U2, I could completely buy that. And again, like the trying to do the epic stuff and the doing the beat switch and really trying to lay it out. So, I mean, they went into this, I don't know, what is this, like 3.5, 4 minutes into the song? Then we go to this for the last couple of minutes. And it's like, yeah. Yes.
You talk a lot about like artists where, hey, they're established and they still have to fight to do certain things. I understand that they had a lot of success with their second album. This is the third album. I can't believe that this was it. And I didn't listen to the radio. Now I did watch MTV, but that's a whole different kind of medium. So I don't know if this was played on the radio, something this long, but I can't believe that they were allowed to have this be the first single.
Yeah, I mean, but you think about at the same time what we had going on with Weezer, right? Like what they were doing. Like it was a lot of jumping off a bridge going on, right? Like people were taking liberties and taking chances, and there was a lot of different ways to try to get big, stay big, feel like the Verizon man. Like, hey, I just sold 3 million copies. How you gonna tell me I can't do what I want to do on the next album, right? And you think these guys are coming along in the decade after Prince and Michael Jackson, right? So you think about how huge those two artists were, but by the mid 90s, you know, Michael Jackson's doing a greatest hits album with a new album attached to it. And Prince has had this big public war with his record label, right? And it's like you're getting too many details. You're starting to see behind the music where these artists with hit songs are telling you how broke they are and how they, or even the ones that got money, they blew it all partying and acting up and buying big expensive houses and cars for everybody. And so like some of that disillusionment was almost aligned with the era, right? So it bleeds into the music. And even when these artists try to be isolated, depending on whether it be where they live, what the type of music is that they make, what record label they're on, it's just, it gets in there because it's in the air, right? Like they all get infected with it in some way, shape, or form. So it impacts, they're still having to deal with record labels, and record labels don't want to spend a bunch of money and not make it back because for them, that's what it is. And for musicians, yeah, some of them want to work and make hits and make the record companies a bunch of money so they can get some small percentage of it back. But sometimes, man, these artists go into artist mode and they want to make the art. They want to make the statement. And they get caught up in doing that, and they almost take the sales as like, well, the record label will do whatever they got to do to make sure it sells. Let me do the art, and, you know, we can figure this out, and we'll try to make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like you think about even something like when Michael Jackson makes Off the Wall, and we brought this up, right? Where it's the number one selling album by a black artist ever. And Mike is a little bit disappointed because he's thinking, well, no, I could do bigger and better than that. So I got to make people are trying to typecast my music. And yeah, me and my brothers are still making music together. So then they make Triumph. And this Triumph is like after Off the Wall and before Thriller. And the first song from that is this song. I don't know if you know this or remember this song because we haven't talked about this. But you remember the song, Can You Feel It?
Can you feel
yeah.
it? Can you feel it? Oh, yeah, when they're the Jacksons.
Yeah.
Can you feel it?
Do you remember the video?
Yes, and I have the song on my phone.
Okay. The video, right, with them being larger than life and they're golden and they're sprinkling the people with the gold.
Sparkling.
And all that. And it's like you got orchestration going in the background, and like that's a version of we're bigger than you think we are, so let's go big and lush and glamorous. And like, look, we all got chauffeurs and handlers. Like we're rich, and we want the music to sound rich and awesome. And we're not just some kid band up here shucking and jiving doing dance routines, even though we had a a variety show like 5 years before that, but that's not all we are. We could do more. And so it's always interesting with these ambitious, super talented artists. Like, man, for Radiohead to have 2 hits under their belt, they're feeling like people is trying to sound like them a little bit. So we talk about Ghostface on the last episode, talking about my rhymes made of garlic, 'cause I don't want people to bite my stuff. And so that's another piece of this OK Computer piece too, which is like, hey, we're trying to get our rhymes made of garlic. We're trying to get our music so elevated and so out there and so distinctly ours, even with our influences mixed in there. But this is still us. We don't want people stealing our stuff. So we're going to rise up and take some crazy chances so that we're so far out there that nobody even wants to try to follow us. So you can hear that in the music too.
You sure can. Now, usually when we're like, hey man, let's try this song, we'll send each other the studio version of it. I sent you the live performance of them doing Paranoid Android, I think on the Jules Holland show. Did you get a chance to check out that live?
I did a lot of foraging and jumping around, but yeah, I caught that. So like I said, I know I listened to the whole OK Computer album. I listened to a lot of the bins. I listened to the playlist you put together that was kind of jumping around through different things. I didn't make it all the way through In Rainbows, but I will after this. But because those songs you sent me, like I remember I stopped while I was listening to it to be like, man, these songs are obviously immediate jamming. Like, holy crap. And I remember the whole festival around them giving away or just saying, hey, we're putting this album out independently. You can give me whatever dollars you want to give me for it, and we'll be cool with that. Like, just, punk rock all the way. Crazy stuff. Trying to figure out how to they were still, even in 2007, 10 years after this album, figuring out, like, how do we do our thing in a way that nobody's going to try to follow us.
Yeah, always trying to fight against, I guess, the masters. I sent you like this playlist. I try to do like kind of like an array of their career to give you like an idea of what they go for. And Planet Telex, the Benz and Jess off the Benz album, Paranoid Android, of course, and then Everything in Its Right Place, a National Anthem off Kid A, Nude and All I Need off of In Rainbows because I thought it sounded kind of R&B like. A Punch Up at a Wedding because I just love the piano on that one. And I was like, okay, that should be enough to hold him over. This whole thing with the Rain Down from a Great Height, just the cinematic value in that. Woo! And like they are able to pull this off live and then studio, wow, great stuff.
Of course. And just think about like the thing I love about bands like this is like they can play for real, man. Like that, they even if the bands have the studio shenanigans and the muffled voices for effect and all the stuff that some of these artists do because they're trying to get too far out to copy. But man, when you get live and you hear the vocals, you hear as I keep saying, the guitaring, you're hearing the playing and everything is just on and locked in. Like, that's a cool thing to see.
That's it, sir. You're leaving. The Crackle of Pigskin. I remember thinking like, whoa, boy. I remember like in high school going, man, they're really going at it. But I was about to whenever this album came out, I was like graduating like within weeks. The Dust and the Screaming. Come on, rain down on me. The Yuppies Networking. Let me turn this into the company. We just finished recording. I'm turning this in. The Panic, the Vomit from a Great Height. The Panic, the Vomit from Great Height. God loves his children. God loves children, yeah. And then right after that, the guitars just start going crazy. It sounds like it's digital. It sounds like humanity and technology are competing and fighting. I think the first time I heard this, I thought like, oh, this is upbeat because the first time I heard it was along with the video. So that last part, those guitars going crazy. I was like, oh yeah, we're victorious. All right. But now when I think about it, it's like, oh, maybe technology won. And we're all walking around paranoid androids, and we're not Cybermen, but we are cyborgs, and what have you, dude. If a 3D printer can help me with a lung, I'll take it. Hence, they have that song on the band's called Iron Lung. It's great. But yeah, this they put a flag in the sand. It worked. They're still a working band. Their last album came out in 2016. Johnny Greenwood and Tom York, along with a drummer that's not Phil from the Radiohead, they came out with an album called Smile. There's some good stuff on there, but we haven't heard anything from them in 10 years. But that's Radiohead, Arthur.
Yes, it is, man. I think we're 40 plus episodes in, and you think about how much great music we've barely scratched the surface on. Things that we've both heard, things that maybe one of us is chapter and verse on and the other one isn't. And like, there's so many other things we can get to. And like, Radiohead is one of these folks. And you think like they were out right around this time of a lot of the stuff we've been talking about these last 5 or 6 episodes. And it's just crazy to think all of these things existing in the same time and space, and everybody doing their own thing, trying to grow, but also, again, trying to get so far out there in some great place that people are like, yeah, you know what? That's awesome, but I'm not even going to try to do that. You guys got it. Y'all can do that. But even with Radiohead, it's so interesting that they thought they had done that, but people kept coming after them, right? Like, people kept trying to be where they were at musically, whether it be topically speaking or some of the abstract stuff. Like, they kept creating blueprints without trying to do it. Like, they really were trying to get left alone and be their own thing. So it's like, you contrast that with something like a Jay-Z. He's literally making an album called A Blueprint. Like, I know y'all are going to keep copying off me, so you want to copy something? Copy this. Like, do this, because this is how you do this. And imagine a group like Radiohead, like, they would make it, if they could name an album, they would call it Don't Do This. Please let us be the ones to do this. You go find your own thing to do, please.
And they kind of do, like, in order to survive going forward, we can't just be a rock band. And there's nothing just about being a rock band, but they just knew, like, we got to open ourselves up to survive and be able to play at these festivals, be able to play along with Daft Punk, all this stuff. So I guess they won. They won. They just, if they come to your town, they're going to sell out.
Yeah, they 100% won. And they got to a point where they were, they don't necessarily have to put out something all the time, but when they do, like you say, people are going to be on hand for it. And even if they don't, even if they just show up and say, you know what, guys, we feel like playing a few of our songs, y'all. Like, people, like you say, people will be there with bells on.
We got to send our reporters out.
Yeah, it's going to be on. Something that we haven't covered that I do want to ask you about, because this name has come up before, and we mentioned it a little bit in some of our texts. Talk to me about Nigel.
Okay, Nigel Godrich. I know he has been with them since the Bends, but I guess you could say he's a 6th member or what, and they trust him. They don't. You would think they've learned enough where we could produce ourselves, or hey, let's try a different producer. But he's like their George Martin, where he's been with them since the beginning. And I know with the Bends, that's when they were really stretching things out and capturing moments. And that's why I'm like, okay, I should have looked it up if he was on Pablo Honey, their first album. But maybe, I'm sorry, I don't know this knowledge, but I know he's been with them since the Bends. And like, they have extra texture. But everything they do, they can pull off live. But It seemed like with producers, if they get the talent's shorthand, that helps tremendously. And I think there's lots of, I remember I read an article, it was probably between the Bends and OK Computer. And in the interview, they talked a lot about, it was more of an article than an interview, but they talked a lot about like jazz musicians that they liked and what they were going for. And it's like, okay, we're trying to go for like this jazz thing, but we fell short and boom, it's this. So it's also like that too. Like it's a lot of like, and we're trying to be these, like, what would jazz sound like if we were 1,000 years into the future? And it's like they're trying to project that. But yeah, he's their, I'm glad you brought that up. He's their trusted producer.
I love stuff like that because, I've mentioned this in some of our earlier episodes that, again, these one-dimensional concepts of how things happen, right? Like if you hear a rap group like Gangstar or Mobb Deep, and you get this concept that it's just these couple of dudes in a room by themselves, like nodding their head and making faces at each other, like, ooh, that's tight. Yeah. And it's like they can just create all these things 100% by themselves, or especially in the more pop universes where you get these geniuses, right? Prince, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder. Love them all. But when people go all the way to this idea, like Stevie was literally sitting in there by himself making all this stuff just by himself, even though I think people forget, but he was a hell of a drummer. So a lot of the drums in the 70s is him on the kit, in addition to the singing and any kind of key playing. But like he also had entire bands of people and session musicians who went on to become much bigger names after or even before working with him, and he was bringing in some of the who's. Prince, same thing. He had a whole revolution with him. Like he was called Prince and the Revolution. Like those people were there. Those people were helping write those songs. Those people were playing instruments on that stuff. So it's always cool for me, even when it's a band, so to speak, and the musicians are actually members of the outfit, and maybe you have a lead singer that's the front man. Maybe you have a head writer. Maybe you have a guitarist that's really popular, or a keyboard guy that's like the ultra super duper keyboard guy that everybody knows is awesome. It's always cool to find out like there's another person. And so when I start seeing more and more about Nigel and how he's worked with them and how he ended up working with other people here and there, in some cases where it worked out, in other cases where it didn't, strokes. But like it's really cool to find out about some of those secret sauce people, right?
Yeah, whereas like, okay, I know you're going for this, then because man, I wish I remembered the article, but it was something where they were all recording in different rooms and they kind of had to trust that you're gonna all get there at the same time. And I can't remember if that was for Fake Plastic Trees or but I think it was something on the Bends. But yeah, where it's, hey, we want to go for this sound. How can we make that possible? And if that producer is knowledgeable, like, oh yeah, we got to record this barn, or you need to go in this restroom and do the vocals there, man, thank God for them producers.
Yep. That
when they can help you get there and facilitate.
Yep, they know how to get there without getting in the way and kind of save you from yourself. As we talked about this a little bit with Earth, Wind, and Fire, they had Charles Stepney, and then eventually they put other people in those roles at different times, like David Foster later on. And it's just crazy to think all these talented people. It just lets you know, man, sometimes you just need somebody. You need somebody that can help you bring it all together. So it's great that we've been lucky enough to have these type of artists, and then they have somebody that helped them put it together on their end, and we just come out on the other end and we get to hear the net result, right?
We get to hear the net result. Yeah. Hey, we talked about this before, but go back and watch the Earth, Wind, and Fire documentary on HBO when they are making Your Shining Star. and just the importance of an engineer. I think that whole scene, that whole sequence can help express what I'm trying to talk about as far as like, hey, this is good stuff. Let me help you straighten this out. This needs to be louder. This needs more for the clarity of it all. Man, I love that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So Arthur, how can they reach us?
All right. Anywhere where we're posted, you can keep the conversation going there. So whether it be YouTube, Amazon, Spotify, all those places. We have ontherecordjams@gmail.com. We have On The Record on Facebook. We have On The Record Jams on the X. We have OTRJ on Blue Sky. And yeah, anywhere, any questions, any things to add on to it. I think like you mentioned, it's really interesting to think about if you come after the fact. You know, we were of a certain age, but I would say even in my case, I was still probably in a different part of my life than the guys who wrote this music. You know, the band, these guys are probably more like 10 years older than us. So it would make sense that they had some of that post-university, starting your career type of disillusionment. And then this time I was just at the beginning of my college career. So I just didn't have that level of confusion or disillusionment. I was asking questions, but really I was in my mind, I was pretty optimistic. But like, man, it'd be interesting to hear what somebody that's like, let's say 20 years old thinks of Radiohead listening to it now with 2026 ears from a I was born in 2006 type of mindset.
Write to us. Let us know some of your favorite Radiohead moments, albums, and songs. So until next time, keep your lamplight trimmed and burning.
And keep jamming.